Critical thinking in practice. How can we integrate it into the classroom?
Hi, my name is Lana, Genius College faculty member. I have about 25 years of experience in teaching college students social studies. In 2001, Paul and Elder introduced the critical thinking framework to help students in mastering their thinking dimensions. The framework aims to improve our reasoning by identifying its different elements of reasoning, intellectual standards, and intellectual traits. Firstly, I will talk to you about the elements of reasoning. Whenever we have a topic or argument to discuss, we tend to use a number of thinking models to understand the topic at hand. These parts are known as the elements of thought or reasoning. Our minds may use these parts over the course to think about the idea. First, the purpose. This part of our thinking includes defining the topic's goal or objective. For example, the goal may involve solving a problem or making a decision. Second is the attempt. This part includes the attempts that previously addressed the topic or attempts to solve a problem. For example, this problem attempted twice and do not solved successfully. Third is the assumption. Before solving a problem, we build assumptions to act as the base of our research about the issue. For example, we assume that a person with coma may suffers from hypoglycemia. Fourth is the point of view. This includes the personal perspective we take while thinking about the topic. For example, we can think about the service that patient expect from the patient and his family members' perspective rather than the business perspective. Fifth is the collection of data, information, and evidences, where we cover the data and information related to the topic. Also, here we have all the supportive evidence. For example, if the patient had arrived with coma, we'll collect information about what was happened exactly, medical history of the patient, lab test, and medical imaging investigation results. Sixth is the thinking about the concepts and ideas. We have all the principles, models, and theories related to the topic. For example, this part may include all the views associated with applying a specific solution. By determining the cause of coma, the proper action will be taken. Seventh is the inferences and interpretations. It concluded solutions based on the previous factors. The conclusion may consist of the suggested solution to a specific problem. For example, this part may include all the views associated with applying a specific interventional practice and solution. Eighth, and the last, is measuring the implications and consequences of interventional actions. All the reasons must lead to consequences resulting from implementing the results of the reasoning process. For example, you have concluded the cause of the coma is hypoglycemia, then what was the result of your intervention? Is your patient back to normal? Is he conscious now? Secondly, I will talk to you about the intellectual standards. The above reasoning parts is great. Yet, it requires a good quality benchmark to achieve its goals and ensure the accuracy of results. The intellectual standards are 9 factors that can evaluate the quality of the reason parts mentioned above. These standards include clarity, accuracy, precision, relevance, depth, breadth, logic, significance, and fairness. Based on these standards, we can ask ourselves some questions to evaluate the reasoning elements. To ensure the clarity of the reasoning, we may ask ourselves if we could elaborate, could illustrate what we mean, could give an example. To ensure the accuracy, we may ask ourselves, how could we check on that? How could we find out if that is true? How could we verify or test that? To ensure the precision of our reasoning, we may ask ourselves, could we be more specific? Could we give more details? Could we be more exact? To ensure the relevancy of our reasoning, we may ask ourselves, how does that relate to the problem? How does that bear on the question? How does that help us with the issue? To take it in depth, we need to ask ourselves, what factors make this difficult? What are some of the difficulties we need to deal with? To take it in breadth, we'll try to explore more if Do we need to consider another point of view? Do we need to look at this in other ways? Next, we need to examine the reasoning logic by asking, does all of this make sense together? Does my first thus fit in with my last one? To measure the reasoning significance, we need to be sure that, if this is the most important problem to consider, and it is the central idea to focus on. And final need to test the reasoning fairness by asking, is my thinking justifiable in context? Am I thinking into account the thinking of others? Is my purpose fair given the situation? Last part of Paul framework is the intellectual traits. First is the intellectual humility. This trait develops one's ability to perceive the known limitation and the circumstances that may cause biases and self-deceptively. Second is the intellectual courage. Courage represents developing a consciousness to address ideas fairly regardless of its point of view or our negative emotions. Third is the intellectual empathy. Empathy is related to developing the ability to put ourselves in others' shoes to understand them. Fourth is the intellectual integrity. This part is related to developing the ability to integrate with other intellectual reasoning and avoid the confusion of our reasoning. Fifth, related to intellectual perseverance. Perseverance develops the need to have a proper insight about the situation regardless of the barriers faced against it. Applying Paul Elder framework provides a clear reasoning about each addressed topic. It improves the critical thinking process by understanding the parts of the reasons and providing a method to evaluate it.
Are you ready to test it yourself? Mrs. J, your 70-year-old patient with pneumonia, appears to be coughing more than the nurse indicated in the change of shift report. You check the medical record, and the nurse who cared for Mrs. J for the last 2 days noted that the patient was coughing more and was too short of breath to get out of bed. As a result, the nurse kept Mrs. J in bed for that time period. You are the next shift nurse. Do you agree with this plan of care? Why or why not? What information would you look for the medical record? Record what you found and develop a new plan of care. Provide a rationale including evidence for your approaches.